The Sparks had the ball, the clock was dwindling, and everything about this game felt like it was slipping into chaos.
Rae Burrell tossed it to Jackson, who tried to use the screen but lost the handle.
The ball bounced loose. Plum tried to scoop it back, only to fumble again. For a split second, the game looked like it might collapse into disaster. And then, out of nowhere, Aaliyah Boston rose above the crowd, ripping the ball out of the sky with a strength that silenced the entire building. The officials signaled timeout Indiana, and in that single moment, the Fever had done it. They didn't just win a game. They clawed their way out of the wreckage of injuries, bad luck, and doubt to earn one of the most meaningful victories of their season. And it wasn't just the stop. It was everything Boston said afterward, a message that echoed far beyond the box score. She told the world this team was built on trust, on confidence, on the belief that whoever was on the floor could finish the job. Those weren't just empty words. They were a blueprint for how the Fever survived a night when their stars were sidelined, their depth was gutted, and their season looked like it was hanging by a thread. This was Indiana's moment of truth. Caitlin Clark in street clothes, Sophie Cunningham unavailable, Sydney Colson and Arie McDonald out. 4 guards gone. 4 voices missing. The Sparks weren't just any opponent either. Los Angeles had beaten them 3 straight times this year, each one more frustrating than the last. And the standings made the stakes brutal. Indiana sat in 6th, barely holding on to a playoff spot, while the Sparks lurked just 2 games back. A loss here could have turned their playoff hopes into a free-fall. For most teams, that's a recipe for collapse. But on this night, the Fever decided collapse wasn't an option. From the very first possession, it was about grit. The Sparks punched first, racing out to a 7-point lead before Indiana could even breathe. The game looked like it might unravel before halftime. But instead of folding, the Fever dug in. Lexi Hull, her face still bruised and both eyes blackened from a collision days earlier, refused to sit. She fought through screens. She chased loose balls. She kept battling even as her body screamed at her to quit. Every time she looked in the mirror, the reminders of that injury were still there. But when she stepped on the floor, she didn't care. She played like someone who believed toughness was contagious. And it was. That energy seeped into every possession. It wasn't pretty. In fact, it was ugly. The turnovers piled up. Shots rimmed out. But there was a defiance in Indiana's effort that wouldn't let go. They clawed for rebounds, they swarmed defensively, and slowly, possession by possession, they refused to let the Sparks bury them. And then, out of the shadows, came the player nobody saw coming. Odyssey Sims, 31 years old, a veteran who had been cut, signed to hardship deals, written off more times than she could count. But when Indiana needed someone, she became the heartbeat of the game. Against her former team in Los Angeles, Sims carried herself like this was personal. She hit the open 3. She darted through traffic for lefty layups. She ripped steals, pushed the tempo, and every time the Sparks threatened to swing momentum, she had an answer. When Kelsey Mitchell struggled through a rough shooting night, Sims stepped forward without hesitation. She didn't just fill a role. She seized the moment. Her stat line read 21 points, but the numbers don't tell the whole story. It was the timing. The floater in the lane with 13 seconds left that gave Indiana the lead for good. The 3-pointer late in the 4th that tied the game when the Sparks thought they had control. These were plays that don't just appear in the box score. These were daggers. And the way she celebrated said it all. No chest thumping, no wild reaction. Just calm, like she had been preparing her whole life for this exact night. Afterward, she explained it in one line that summed up her career. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Sims had been doubted, discarded, told her time was over. Yet in the biggest moment of Indiana's season, she was the one holding the ball when it mattered most. That wasn't an accident. That was resilience, but even her brilliance wasn't enough on its own. The anchor of the night, the force that made sure Los Angeles never found a rhythm, was Aaliyah Boston. 22 points, 11 rebounds, 6 steals, the most of her young career, and every one of those stats felt bigger than the numbers on the page. When Indiana needed a bucket, she delivered in the paint with jump hooks and soft finishes. When they needed a stop, she was there to wall off the rim. When they needed a play, she dug her hands into passing lanes, tipped balls, and turned defense into instant offense. And in the final 2 seconds, when Los Angeles tried to mount one last miracle, it was Boston who ended it by ripping the ball out of the air, crushing any hope of a Sparks comeback. But it wasn't just what she did. It was what she said afterward. She praised the Fever's next woman up mindset. That belief that no matter who goes down, no matter who can't suit up, the rest of the team leans in harder. And when you looked back at the night, You saw that phrase come alive everywhere. Hull with her bruised face diving on the floor. Sims seizing her moment after years of setbacks. Aerial Powers bringing instant offense off the bench. Natasha Howard spinning her way to key buckets. Every single piece fit into the identity Boston described. That's what made this win so important. It wasn't just revenge against the Sparks. It wasn't just holding on to 6th place in the standings. It was proof that the Fever's culture is real. Proof that when Boston says we trust each other, it isn't a slogan. It's who they are. And looming over all of this is the one name nobody can stop talking about, Caitlin Clark. For the first time in weeks, she's back on the practice court. Back warming up with the team. Back in shooting drills and light scrimmages. She hasn't played yet, but her presence alone changes the mood. Every time she picks up the ball, fans start buzzing. Teammates glance over with a spark in their eyes. Coaches hover close, watching every step, praying there's no setback. The Fever only have a handful of games left. Every single one could swing the playoff race. Right now, they sit just ahead of Seattle. One slip and they could tumble. One surge and they could rise. Clark's return could be the difference. Before the injury, she was averaging nearly 20 points and 8 assists, changing the way defenses guarded Indiana. With her on the floor, Boston gets more space, Mitchell gets cleaner looks, and the entire offense hums with balance. That's why this win in Los Angeles mattered so much. It showed the Fever can survive without her. But the thought of adding her back into the mix transforms survival into something bigger. Suddenly, this team doesn't just look like a playoff squad trying to hang on. They look like a group learning how to win tough games under fire. And with Clark waiting in the wings, they could become something far scarier. A team no one wants to see in the first round. The Fever walked off the floor in LA with more than just a win. They walked away with belief. Belief that toughness and resilience are enough to carry them through nights when nothing comes easy. Belief that their depth and culture can weather the storm, and belief that with their superstar guard inching closer to return, this season might only be beginning. This wasn't just another game. This was a statement, a message to every team chasing them, to every critic who said they couldn't withstand the injuries, to every opponent waiting for them to collapse. Indiana isn't breaking. They're building, and if Caitlin Clark steps back on the floor before the playoffs begin, the Fever might not just be survivors. They might be contenders. So tonight, Fever fans can finally breathe. They can look at the standings with a little less fear and a lot more hope. Because this win wasn't just about the Sparks. It was about proving that Indiana is here to fight. And that fight might just carry them farther than anyone expected.